Ladies and gentlemen, this interview is brought to you by Burn Up Coaching and the 21-Day Challenge. So if you have plateaued, if you've felt stuck, feel like you're not achieving the results that you know you're capable of, or you just want to take your performance to the next level, then that's why we created the 21-Day program, because our clients hire us to do all those things. And with this 21-Day Challenge, you're going to have one-on-one coaching support to make sure that you're staying on track. You're going to get crystal clear on your goals, on your vision for your 1 year, so that you know in the next 21 days, you know you're going to be achieving that goal that's meaningful and important to you. And then we're going to have that daily check-in, weekly deep dive coachings. We're going to get your habits in line, get your daily rituals in line, and make sure that you're fired up, kicking butt, and taking names. So that's the 21-Day Challenge. If you're interested in it, send me a message and let me know, because we only take on 5 people at once for this 21-Day Challenge. So we'd love to talk to you, see if it's a good fit for you. Send me a message or get in contact with me today. Now, let's talk about the iTunes review of the week. It's from Miss Rosie Rosebud. Chris inspires with his wisdom, energy, and brilliance. He asks profound questions of his guests so you can learn strategies to help yourself become your greatest self. His heart is big to help others. Be sure to subscribe to keep inspired on your journey. So thank you so much, Rosie Rosebud. And if you want to get a shout out on one of the future marathons, definitely leave us a review on iTunes. Would love to hear from you and hear what your thoughts are on the show, if we can improve, do things differently, what you find valuable, all that good stuff. Search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self in iTunes, or go to beyourgps.com/iTunes, or search Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self on Facebook. Now, for the woman of the hour. Ivy Slater is a professionally certified business coach, speaker, author, and podcast host. After owning and operating a 7-figure printing business, she started her Slater Success Coaching company. Now in its 10th year, Slater Success Coaching, SSC, focuses on developing great leaders and facilitating business growth and expansion. Ivy holds masterminds and retreats with her private client base and corporate training on communication and strategic planning. She speaks nationwide on the topics of leadership, money, and sales. Ivy, you ready to rock this? She is excited to be here.
This marathon.
Woohoo! We're doing our marathon. Woo! Yeah.
It's marathon day. It's marathon day. It's
yes.
marathon day.
Yes. We get to be a part of the party. I love it. So, Ivy, thanks so much for being on here today. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and coming on here to share with our audience the wisdom, the journey, what you've learned, and to help us go from possibility to profitability. And before we get there, let's start diving into the theme of the day, which is healing your self-image. So, Ivy, how has this concept of heal your self-image, how has that played a role in your life, and what difference has it made for you?
You know, healing your self-image, just a point of reference is you have me on a week, so that I'm actually hunkered upstate New York, and I have been spending roughly about 10 hours a day in writing my next book.
Wow.
So in the looking back, and the point why that's a point of reference is in looking at healing your self-image. And, you know, I'm looking at the evolution of myself as a businesswoman, the evolution of where I've come from. You know, our self-image, sometimes our confidence levels are lower. And we're trying to evolve, and we're working on building that inner confidence to step forward and grow to our if it's our next business, our next expansion, our next strategic plan. And the success of the outside and all the actions we take is a result and in correlation with the internal growth we do for ourselves.
Yes.
So,
oh my gosh.
Goodness, you have me at the time.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And I bet when you're writing too, like you notice all these things as you recollect the past, you get a new perspective on it. This reflection process allows us to see, what did I not pick up or notice back then? Like a debriefing, right? You get to see what were the details that I might have missed back then, or what did I maybe not put enough attention into, or what really, really worked, and what do I want to keep doing? What were those secrets and those strategies that really really accelerated me and propelled me into success into the future. So I can only imagine going through this process, like your self-image, not only are you working on it, but you're actually rebuilding it. You get to build it how you want this book to portray you, and you get to tell this story, this new story with the book of how you want people to see you from now on too.
Exactly. And you have to kind of look. You have to look at yourself. And what I'm doing this week is I'm looking at the journey. We're looking at every 10-year cycle. And we all know every 10 years there's a growth and expansion. We're in a different place than we were. You know, you're at a different place at 25, 35, 45, 55, 65,
Totally.
and onward. Yeah. You know, it's different periods of our lives. And hence, in business, there's different periods, whether, you know, you started in corporate, whether you're staying in corporate, whether you're, you know, started young as a business owner and now you're a business owner 20 years later or 30 years later. It very often isn't it's not what you were at 25. It's not the business it was at 25. It's, you don't see things in the same light as we evolve and grow.
Yeah. My gosh, I love it. I love it. This is juicy. Going deep, Ivy. Thank you for sharing your perspective and sharing about writing your book. I wish you the best of luck with that. I know you're going to rock it and create a masterpiece. Yes, you are. So diving into what you're working on today, tell us more about SSC, Slater Success Coaching, and what you guys got going on.
Oh, we have a lot going on. Well, obviously we have a second book going on.
Yes.
There is that. Hello. But we're doing at the same time we're redoing our website.
Ooh.
Okay. It's 10 years. This is our 10th anniversary. We're not the company we showed up at 10 years ago.
Wow. We're
not the company we showed up when the site evolved the last go round, which was 6 years ago. Wow. It's time to evolve it again. And, you know, so who are we today? We do strategic planning. We do strategic growth. We do everything that complements that, which is talking about trainings as far as sales, communication. I'm a firm believer of numbers tell us a story, and we have to be looking at those stories. If we're not paying attention to the stories, and it's not just the financial growth, but the stories and the numbers that sit in your marketing, the numbers that sit in your sales, your conversions, your strategic growth plan has to be based on the data of the ground floor here in order to go here. So it's looking and understanding what that data is and what that number story is, and then planning forward. When we jump in and plan forward, we're looking at, well, who we are, what is our why? I have this expression, Chris. It's what do we want and why do we want it? And the plan, that's the motivation of the plan.
Yeah, it's like that what do you want is, you know, your perfect day. Imagine that. Imagine you're living your dream life in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever amount of time. Where do you want to be? Without that destination and the ability to articulate it, the ability to feel it, the ability to be tapped into that, then your plan is not going to work, because we're probably going to find reasons to make excuses or go off the plan or not show up as what we really want if our vision isn't pulling us through the hardship, the crap, you know, the daily challenges, because that stuff's going to come up. And the plan is great, and life is constantly evolving. You never know what you're going to get. You never know like how we're going to need to pivot and change, but starting with that plan, the end destination that's inspiring, that feels connected, that feels right, that feels good, and is in alignment with the brand and the values is so critical.
And it's exciting. It's exciting. And when you're hunkered down and you have, you know, talk about that inner space, when you truly know what you want and why you want it, you can mobilize and accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And we look at, you know, you referenced, you know, possibility earlier. When you know what's important to you, you can create possibility, and you can actually see it. And when you're willing to see it, you could then break it down into what you was talking about earlier, what was incredibly important. And anybody who doesn't take you up on those 5 spots is downright silly, in a very polite way of saying. If you're in New York with me, I'd say it very, very much more direct, just telling you. Is you could then create the specific goals and then the actionable plans that get you there. You must do that. But if you're not willing to see possibility, and that possibility is aligned with what you want as a person, and why do you want that? Why is this important to you? Because that's the motivation to take those actions that you break down for the goals.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So juicy. So Ivy, we're diving into the philosophy and possibility and vision, dialing that all in. Before we go any further, I want to take us a couple steps back into the journey. You started off with that printing company, you reached 7 figures, let's dive into what happened with that. What were some of the lessons that you learned in your transition into where we're at now with Slater Success Coaching?
Lessons learned in 20 years of printing. I don't know if there's a book long enough right now that anybody would want to read. In the early years, I got into printing because I was determined to be a business owner. And I had tried to start 2 other businesses. And at 27 years old, I could not have access to the funds or even get loans from the bank because I had nothing to collateralize. Okay, at a leased apartment, we had a leased car. We were a newly married young couple. We had bupkis, in short order. And I felt when I had this opportunity to go into printing, and I was like, well, I could build out a book of business. I know I can. That will create real value. And I know I can achieve, being the master of my own destiny, which was incredibly important to me.
Yes.
And I started taking the actions, and I show up day one. I was like, I'm ready. I have my nice little suit with my pantyhose and 2-inch pumps, and I'm ready to conquer New York City. And I was like, where do I get started? And they told me the yellow pages of the pavement. Pick one. So basically start dialing for dollars. Yeah. A good old fashioned headset phone, going through the yellow pages. Hi, do you buy printing? Hello, do you buy printing? What is printing? Are you looking at the yellow pages? Somebody printed it. Versus the old-fashioned way of walking the pavement, and this is in the good old days of an elevator pitch, when you truly, before there was security in all these big buildings, that you actually were going into an elevator and seeing who you could meet. And, whether they were getting off on the 12th floor, you had that much time. If it was the 30th floor, it was the 5th floor. Hi, you work in a building? So what company do you work for? I'm just here visiting. And you would find it, a name on the board. Yep. And I was like, oh, I don't know much about that company. Well, and you had seconds to be on your game. Wow. From there, I started, going into, I said, I could sell advertising agencies. This will give me a great living. And I decided that was going to be who I went after as a printer, because they printed a lot of stuff back in this time. Yeah. I got into it in the late 80s. So I was like, this is going to be great. Well, the men controlled, Mad Men, hello. The men controlled the business, and they weren't dealing with a woman printer.
Wow.
I couldn't get a meeting. I could not even get a meeting. And it was continuing to show up until my niche market appeared. And it appeared because I continued to show up. And that niche was magazines and publishing and doing their marketing and sales collateral. Publishing was, I don't know if it still is, so don't quote me, was a lower paid industry. So women were able to become marketing managers, directors of advertising and marketing, and work their way up. And so I leveraged the woman relationship. And I never sold them printing. I sold them service. I sold them the ability for them to shine to their bosses.
That's juicy. So how did you discover that was the need that needed to be filled? Like you saw that these women wanted to shine to their bosses. How did you discover that?
Well, they say we don't become coaches. We're always, the coaches today, the consultants today are the people who've always been interested and have always asked a lot of questions. I was that person. I was like, I'm not asking for an opportunity to do a job for you. I just wanted to meet you and ask, get an understanding of what you do here at quote unquote W Magazine, and which was one of my biggest accounts for over 20 years. They're like, oh, so we, and I meet this woman, and just like, well, we do the marketing collateral so our salespeople can go out and sell advertising for W. I was like, oh, so ask a few more questions. What do those salespeople need, and how does your role support them? I'm just looking to understand. I'm not here to sell you printing.
Right.
I'm interested in you. I'm looking to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask questions, and lo and behold, at the end, they're like, "So do you have a portfolio of your work?" And I said, I didn't bring it. I didn't come to sell you printing. I came to understand what you do and if I could be of support to you. And it would be really silly for me to bring you somebody else's work when I don't even know what you do.
Mm.
That's a little assumption. Like, that's presumptuous, right?
Right.
And, in sales, are we inquiring enough? In running and building a business, are we inquiring and being interested enough?
Mm.
So I came in and asked questions. And then I said, well, if you would like, I'll come back and I'll show you some of the work that's applicable to what you do. But most importantly, I'm hearing you say that you get frustrated when your proofs aren't here on time, that when there's delays and you don't know when people are in communication with you. So if we ever did work together, that's what I would make sure did not happen. So as I started getting business, we instituted policy. If a proof left our office, we called the client and said, we just want to let you know it's in the messenger's hand. Call your mailroom in 40 minutes. It will be there.
Wow.
So we shifted to, what can we do for you? The good printed piece is a given, right? There shouldn't not be a good printed piece, right? I shouldn't be able to sell you better printing than the other guy. It's printing.
Right.
But what do you actually need? The printed piece was the given. What do you need? Well, I need to not be calling you 3 times, like, where's my proofs? Where's my proofs? Where's my proofs? What time are we getting the delivery? Is the delivery on schedule? So we took the initiative, and you don't have to call us. We're going to update you every step of the way. Mm-hmm. Wow. So we delivered on the service. And that's how, so how did I find this niche? I got one opportunity. We delivered on the opportunity, and I literally got passed around what the parent company at the time was Fairchild Publications. W Magazine said, oh my goodness, you need to meet this person at Women's Wear Daily, and you need to meet this person here. And I have a friend at New York Magazine. They need to use you. You need to talk to them. And then New York Magazine passed me over to our Ad Age and Crane's Communication. And we got passed around based on 100% service.
Wow. And I love that, because there's so many opportunities for business these days, but as time goes on, each industry, each niche, each vertical gets more and more saturated. So it's being more effective at asking, what do you need? For example, for coaching, it's we get it, the weekly call, the empowerment, the accountability, that's like a given, but what do you need? Right. What is the above and beyond that is going to make the difference for you? So I love that we're starting off with that, because that's gold. So after you started growing, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to chime in on that for a sec.
Yeah.
Also, because you're very right. There's so many coaches out there, and support, accountability, and all the work should be part of that printing. It's a given. Mm-hmm. But understand how do you bring it to the table? What makes you different? And I think that's hugely important. Mm-hmm. As a printer, I didn't take the ladies who were buying printing out to the steak restaurant like the other guy printers did. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to get you a steak. And I'm like, oh, would you like to go to Saks? There's a lovely cafe. And then we can look at, see the different colors of lipsticks that are coming out for the season to complement, right, your work.
Yes.
Oh, that would be lovely. So meet them where they are, and how do you show up differently? How do you identify, as opposed to being another coach, another consultant, another marketer, another social media company? How do you separate yourself in the marketplace? How do you show up? What's your brand about? I think that's a piece that needs to be recognized.
Yeah, that's so true. I love it, Ivy.
By your people.
Yes, yes. So as far as moving forward, like what did you do? You started getting this business and your company got to seven figures. Like what was the evolution of that and what happened next?
Well, in the evolution of that, two children were born.
Mm.
What happened next was, okay, so the expenses went up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened next. We decided to raise two kids in New York, in the heart of New York City. Gee, let's make some money. You're going to get me. The one thing is I am completely, like I say, the complete disclosure, I'm going to
Yes.
give it to you as raw as it is. It's okay. Well, a double stroller in New York City cost $500 at that time.
Oh my gosh.
Gee, we should make some money. How do you grow and scale? So how do you do that? For me, it was, how do I do this as a working mom? And for that, it was build a great support team. Build the team that, I didn't call the client to say the messenger was on the way. It was like, hey, we'll just refer to them as Mary. It's Ivy. It's Doris from Slater Graphics. I just want to let you know the messenger just left with your proof. He's coming directly to your office. So remember to check the mailroom in about 40 minutes so it's there.
Yes.
If you need anything else, if you're ready to be picked up, just call me. Remember, I'm Doris. You can reach me. Right? How do you build that support team so it's not on all me?
Wow.
Because if it was, then I couldn't have gotten it to 7 and beyond. It's, if we're washing the dishes, cleaning the windows, and wiping the floors as a CEO, then and there's times, and I believe as a CEO, you better be willing to wash the dishes, wipe the floors, and clean the toilets. In all honesty, if you're not willing to do that, close your company. You have to be willing to do everything it takes.
Yes.
On the scalability, though, you need to actually build a team that has your voice, that has their own integrity and the values that's clearly in the company. And that from there is how you can grow. From there is how you can scale. And that gave me the ability to being a working mom.
Wow. What was your biggest challenge in delegation and getting the team to work as an effective, cohesive unit that carried the brand values and message?
I think the biggest challenge is trust for me. We teach, we create brand values, we create company values and culture, and we put all this effort in, right? And vitally important pieces. The hardest piece for me is to actually trust that it's going to be carried through. Trust that when I chose that Thursday to go on that field trip, that I'm going to disappear for 4 hours, right? And not be in my office because I'm going to do this balancing act, and I'm going to be everywhere, right? I'm going to be everything to everyone, and I'm going to be everywhere, that I trust they have my back. I trust by all the training and the culture and the values and the interviewing process and all of that process, that it's delivered in my absence, that I can go on a vacation and I know my company continues and will continue to grow. Because you trust.
Wow. So it was hard to get that trust, to build that trust with them. Just learning. I think that's a natural progression of entrepreneurship, though. In the beginning, we have to do it all on our own. That's like the typical model of why an entrepreneur becomes an entrepreneur. It's like because I want the freedom, because I want the choice, because I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, right? And to have people to give that away and give that trust, and to give people that responsibility and control, give people that control of managing the process. It can definitely be a challenge.
Yeah, and it's we teach, we train, we do the group intensives, as far as even with my team, we virtual retreats because our team is dispersed these days. And, we did that then and we do that now. But you have to be, if you're growing a company, you have to be able to also step out and enjoy your life that it's building you.
Yes.
And you have to, that trust that the company, if I'm on a week vacation, is we're still getting clients. We are still growing. We're still invoicing. We're still doing things.
Yes.
Whatever it is, it doesn't stop because we might, do something in our personal world.
Right. Right.
And your team has to be ready to support that. That's the effort that's put in. But the releasing of trust, especially in the early stages, is scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
It is. It is. It definitely can be. So that's awesome. So you learned how to trust and delegate and have your team take over. And then what was the transition into Slater Success Coaching? How did that come about? And what's that evolution been like?
How it came about was a midlife crisis in April of 07 when I was 45, as I'll date myself. I imploded. There were several things going on personally. It was the anniversary of my dad's passing. I never truly mourned. I kind of just took care of my family and went back to work. My birthday was that month, and I just woke up and I said, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Am I going to do this for the next 20? My kids were then teenagers. And I was like, it came to this, like, who am I moment? I was like, oh God, I don't want to die as a printer. It truly, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, so who am I going to become so I don't do that?
Yeah. And
I just, cried for 30 days. I became Noah's Ark a bit and built forward and saw what was, I had a trust in the process, and that was hard. Yes. I explored. A friend of mine, we were in a park in New York City doing walking lunges, working out, and I was weeping my brains out. She goes, you want to become a coach? And we were in a park, so I was overlooking the soccer fields where my kids played soccer on Saturdays. And I was like, you want me to be a soccer coach? Because that was like where my brain went. And she goes, what are you talking about? Don't you know about this whole thing about coaching? I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, you know what, Ivy, you've helped me build this business, expand this business. I'm making more money. I was like, what are you talking about? Are we talking about soccer? And she goes, no, silly. I'm talking about coaching. I'm like, but you said we're not talking about soccer. And I didn't get it. And I literally went home, and in April of 07, I hit Google and I was like, what is coaching? And like soccer and tennis came up. And then you went the next level down, and you learned. And I learned, and I started exploring, and I started interviewing people, who knew people who were coaches. And then from them, I got to coaches, and I interviewed them, and I interviewed different schools to get certified. And I needed to understand. And one of my key questions, and it's not to sound shallow, but can you make a living at this? Two kids, New York City, 7-figure business, very nice lifestyle. When I said, oh, maybe I'll become a yoga teacher, and my business partner, my printing partner goes, I didn't know yoga teachers shopped at Bergdorf's, Ivy. And I'm like, which is the New York Neiman Marcus, their exclusive store. And I was like, okay, you're probably right there. Is this a viable? And in 07, I didn't know that coaching was a viable entity. A lot of people didn't know what it was, including me. Right. So it was about that research and that interview process. And, when we work with people who are newer in establishing their business, you're like, how many people have you spoken to? How many interviews have you done? And people in the industry and potential clients and market research. And, you must have your ground floor data.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started.
That's incredible. Just like freedom, next step, meaning of life. Okay, coaching. Let's check it out. Let's figure this thing out.
Yeah, and it was 100% a figure it out, your process. But it was also about taking action. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, within that, it was 60 days later, I was enrolled in a coaching certification program. It wasn't about 6 months figuring it out. It was like, okay, epiphany, do something. We have to, this is going to take, you don't just walk away from the business you built over 20 years.
Right.
So that was going to be a process, right? So in that process, it was, okay, how do we get started? And a beginning date, an end date, a transition date. From this, I had to look at what is going to happen with this business. I needed this. I ran the two businesses for 2 years to build up a book of business and coaching and start building this out. I'm a big practical person.
Right. All right. Yeah.
And with 2 kids, income is important.
Right. You got to have a plan of how will things keep sustained, right. Like how make sure we don't drop off the cliff and then have to like starve our way back to the top. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So you started doing that and you built up Slater Success Coaching, and you focus on strategy, you focus on helping people with their marketing and figure out what their plan is, their strategic planning. So you got into that. And then the other thing is with the profitability, like you turn from the title of this is 5 keys from possibility to 5 key strategies from possibility to profitability. So let's start diving into those.
Right.
Let's start getting into those strategies that you have been learning about, that you've been integrating in your coaching and you teach your clients.
So I'm a strong believer, like you are, with goal setting. Before you could set a goal, you have to actually create a vision, and you have to create a big vision, or, that quote unquote big, hairy, audacious goal, right? What happens if you go bigger? What happens if you go bigger? What can it look like? And I think that's really important. And so we start with possibility, because you can't start a goal without what's possible. And, when, they say, statistics show, and I do the quotes here, statistics show coaches make on an average of $30,000.
Right.
That's not possible in my realm. What's possible for me?
That don't work.
Yeah. We need at least a 0 on that to make a living, It's New York City. Right. I love to travel. I like nice things. I love to travel.
Right.
I love to travel. Hence there's all a theme here. You have to be able to step out and live, Yes. So what's actually possible? And if I actually stayed with those statistics, I was playing small. So what's actually possible, and what's possible for you? How do you play a bigger game? From there, you can establish your goals and you can create your action plans. When we look at our action plans, we're looking at, a business is not a business unless you have sales.
It's true.
If you got nothing to sell, you're not in business. It's a hobby. And there's nothing wrong with a good hobby, mind you. Right? And we should all have some great hobbies.
Yep.
But if we're not selling something, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
So what you sell, what problem does that solve for your buyers? Until you truly know that and understand that, you can't do any marketing, because you don't really know who your buyers are and you don't know why they want that. Once you have this information, then you could go into positioning yourself in the marketplace. When I was in printing, believe me, everybody had a relative or a neighbor who was a printer. Oh, you're a printer. My brother's a printer. My father's a printer. My next door neighbor's a printer. So it's okay. So I'm going to do something unique, and I'm going to become a coach. Nobody's a coach because it doesn't matter. Nobody knows what coaching is in '07. So I'm going to be a coach. I have it down in the marketplace. Well, jump forward, right? 2018. How many coaches are out there, Chris?
A lot.
Right? How do you position yourself in the marketplace? How do I position ourselves in the marketplace? That's where we can actually create and understand our marketing position and create a marketing plan based on understanding that.
Wow.
And we go back to pipeline. If you're not selling, you're not in business. You can't just be closing sales left, right, and sideways, right? We have to have people at the different stages of a pipeline. How are you looking at your pipeline, and how are you working a pipeline? Do you have clients that come through the pipeline and they go back to the beginning again, or do they go away? Do they refer people to your pipeline, to the beginning in your pipeline? Do they refer people that come in at the end of your pipeline? And then if you're going to be in business and it's not a hobby, we need to be profitable.
Yeah.
We don't have to necessarily worry about, gee, am I selling $30,000 or $30 million? Because we could be selling $30 million and having an overhead of $35 million. And that's not a very good 7-figure business, is it?
Nope. 7 figures in the wrong direction.
Correct. So if we don't really understand and are consistently working on profitability and have an intrinsic understanding of it, and how to work your strategic plan with an eye on profitability. So that's what we're doing these days.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. So in terms of the profitability, what do you see most companies or entrepreneurs, what mistakes do you think that they're making around the focus on profitability? Do they say, oh, it'll come one day? Do they just not even think about it in detail? Like what mistakes are they making?
They don't want to look at the numbers. If I meet a business owner, an entrepreneur, and I was like, okay, so yeah, you know your overhead? They're like, well, my bookkeeper does, or my accountant does. What are your sales year to date? I'm not sure, I have to look that up. I'm like, really? Who's running your business? You know, people don't necessarily want to, you know, okay, so out of these marketing efforts, or out of the, you know, out of your, if it's you're one person, if you're a smaller business and you're really handling the sales versus if you built out your sales team, what's your conversion rate? You know, recently, and I'm going to have to, let me figure that out. I haven't really looked at it recently. It's like, we have to be willing to look at the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on Facebook Live with you now, right? We're live doing this marathon. I've been doing a Facebook Live this week, every day at noon in this Writing the Book. We committed to Monday through Thursday. Okay. So how many, in the middle of the writing, I'm going back and looking at the stats. What are our viewers? What questions are they asking?
Yes.
And I'm doing 10 hours a day to write. And we're still looking at those stats. We have to be willing to look at our numbers and actually love it, because the information it gives us the ability to make our next actions and our next plans.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So we talked about a couple things, you know, really starting with that possibility, starting with something to sell, and that includes knowing what our customers, our clients want, and how we're going to facilitate that, how we're going to deliver that, how we're going to be different and unique in the marketplace, and then also building a pipeline, and how does that pipeline, you know, how do we move people through that pipeline? You know, whether we call it a pipeline, a sales funnel, marketing funnel, how do people continue to build their buying temperature through that process to be able to make the purchase? And then we talked about the numbers, because the numbers are critical. If you don't know your numbers, like that's running a hobby too. That's winging it. That's, you know, just asking for like one thing to go wrong, one kind of, you know, unexpected rainy day, and like your whole business collapses, and like it causes years and years of, you know, financial hardship. Don't do that to yourself. Know what those numbers are. Know the current stats, the current tracking, and so that you can plan for things. If a trend is going on, you can plan for it much more ahead of time. If things have been going downhill, but you haven't been paying attention to that, and it's due to some action or some lack of action in your business, then it's time to correct that now. And numbers really give us an access to that.
Exactly. And when you put those all together in a package, that's what, you know, we do at Slater Success. That's how I work with my clients. You know, in this, you know, added to it is the leadership capacity, the communications, because all of this is based on great leaders. Great leaders can go through this process. Great leaders have great communication skills.
Right. Wow.
Great leaders can build great teams. to help, because if you're depending upon what you're looking to grow and scale and what your what and why are, you are not necessarily doing it alone. And I don't advise you to do it alone. It's very lonely to do this alone. Guys, wake up. Don't do this alone.
It's not even possible. like think about it. The concept of building a business on your own, it's like, where's the money going to come from? Are you going to get clients, or are you alone getting clients, and like networking? And it's just the concept of alone in business is so ridiculous. So if you're going to go out there and get clients, then you might as well be looking for people to serve, as well as looking for people who can serve you, finding those people who you can ask for help, knowing what your weaknesses are, knowing what value you add to the people around you, to the marketplace, whatever, knowing what your assets are that you can be standing upon. That's your foundation that you can approach people with, say, hey, I got this going. I don't have this aspect working. How can you support me? Or here, I'm looking for these resources. I'm looking for these connections. So this concept of alone in business, even my business partner, he talks about like being, he likes the philosophy of alone. And I'm like, dude, it's community. Driving community is what will build a business these days. Like focusing on that aspect of things is so important, so critical. And it's funny.
It is. And, I see the biggest burnout with people who are hunkered down and saying, I can do it all. I'm going to do this alone. And I don't want help. And I'm not ready to bring on this, that, and the other thing. It's like, a few conversations, but I'm not going to engage because I don't want to work with martyrs.
Yeah.
I work with true leaders.
Yeah.
And in the fulfillment of that, when you see them grow and shine and take off, and whether it be my entrepreneurial business owners growing and scaling clients, or the clients I work with in corporate organizations with strategic planning and leadership development and sales and communications training, watching them take off is such a joy.
Yeah. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Ivy, what have you been learning recently? Like what new pieces of wisdom have you been gaining? I know you're writing this book. What has been some big ahas for you recently?
Where to start? So I'm going to say opportunity stares us blue in the face. Are we willing to keep our eyes open to actually see it and step into it? And I mean, it's something that I might have known and I have known, but in celebrating our 10th year and being clearer in the work we do, being clearer in the difference we make, and being willing to play on a bigger, greater field. Okay, whether it be a baseball field, soccer field, football field, whatever that field is that I'm not coaching. Being willing to play on a bigger field. Opportunities have been showing up. And I was invited to an event that, through a bank, and somebody I met, I was speaking at somebody, and, whatever. And somebody came over and they introduced themselves like, oh, we should talk. Yeah, of course we should talk. And we talked. And she goes, oh, would you like to come to this event that, we host? I'm like, oh, thank you so much. I'd love to. And she goes, are you willing to go here for it? I was like, sure, that would be lovely. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I said, to thank you, I'd like to take you to dinner before the event. And she's like, oh, we host a dinner for our keynote speaker and blah, 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 blah. And why don't you come to that? And the next thing I know, I'm sitting at a table of 12 people sitting next to, and she positions me next to their keynote, who built a $1 million company, who sold out to IKEA recently. So that's going to be that way, right? Not disclose too much here, or at least not name names. And we're sitting and talking about how we're both dancers when we were younger, and this alignment of this, that, and the other thing. And somebody else says, oh, Ivy, you wrote a book, or how do you this one? So one of, 10 executives the keynote, and me. And not executives from local, like they had people fly in from offices around the globe, around the country, not around the globe, around the country. Wow. And then in leaving, one of the women, it's like, oh, I'm head of our national women's blah, 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 blah. We should talk. Yeah, so here's okay. She goes, do you do, like, you have I was like, yeah, I have a book, and we do a weekly blog newsletter, and I do a weekly podcast and a mini video. She goes, oh, we're always really looking for content. And maybe you could help us with that. Maybe you could help us with a few other things. We're now having discussions on restructuring this whole department for them and all their offerings to their clients. I couldn't have seen the possibility of that 1 year ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
You know, in saying, okay, year 10, we're going to redo our website. We're going to play bigger. Year 10, you know what? I'm getting another book out there. We're doing this. What's possible? Let's go make a difference in bigger companies and this, that, and the other thing. And people are like, well, how are you going to do that? I was like, we're just going to meet some people. We're going to, right? And so in being willing to be open, possibility is here. I've taught it for years. Possibility is sitting next to your chair and my chair right now. Are you willing to say, oh, hi, let me introduce myself. You're sitting next to me. Let's converse. And go with that, as opposed to very often we're so busy running and running and running and trying so hard, as opposed to grounding ourselves and opening our eyes and being here and seeing what's in front of our face. Wow. So that's what this year is for me.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love this, Ivy. This is gold. And, I love how opportunity is everywhere, and it's actually staring us right in the face. Possibility is everywhere too. It's actually sitting right next to you, right? Like this mindset of like everything you need is within reach, within, like, at the tips of your fingers. Are you willing to look at it? Are you willing to recognize it? Are you willing to acknowledge it and then take action on it? Are you willing to execute and follow through and do those things? And the only way that you could be opening up yourself to these opportunities is by being willing to take that next step, is by being willing to go with your intuition, your gut, with what your heart and your mind tells you, and take those next steps. So it's beautiful. So we're beginning to wrap up now, and I just want to recap, what are the most important takeaways we wanted our audience to get from this interview?
Couple of takeaways, most important takeaways. Listen to those 5 Ps. Start with possibility. If you go nowhere, at least be willing to start with possibility. Okay. You can find out more about the 5 Ps. It's going to be in we have a lot of new content coming out in the next few months, so stay tuned.
Awesome.
Obviously with a new site, a new book. So if to keep it simple, as opposed to getting everybody confused with, be willing to play big in possibility. If that's the one place you're going to start, be willing to play big in possibility. Create your goals from there. Most people's studies show that we fall just short of obtaining our goal. Well, we really wanted to buy this house, but this house is lovely. I really wanted to refurnish my kitchen, and I wanted this sink, but this sink will do. If you go for even a bigger sink, you're going to get the sink you want. Be willing to play a big game. Be willing to then clarify and create a goal around that and break down those actionable steps. Know what your messages are, the problems you solve. Know that if you're in business means you're in sales.
Yep. Beautiful.
Stop fighting it.
Stop fighting.
Embrace it. Embrace it. If you need help with it, reach out and get help with it.
Yes.
But allowing yourself any time to stay stuck is a choice. Allowing yourself to see things as hard is a choice. There's another option.
Yes. This is good. That was juicy. Allowing yourself to stay stuck is a choice. Ivy, this is gold, and I know our listener or watcher, viewer right now, whether it's live or replay, definitely wants to find out more about you and stay connected with you. How do they do that? How can they take that next step?
Okay, a couple of ways. Well, Slater Success Coaching's website is up, and there will, in the near future, be a new Slater Success website up. So definitely check out our website, slatersuccesscoaching.com. You could find us under ssc.com or just Slater Success. I've been around for 10 years. I show up in a few different ways. Exciting for us as we launch this podcast. I'm interviewing some amazing people, really great leaders. It's called Her Success Story. Join me there.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Ivy, you're a rock star. Keep up the amazing work. And listener or watcher right now, definitely take that next step. Stay connected with Ivy because she is just on fire, and we can tell you're just full of love, full of possibility, and also keeping it grounded, keeping it real, understanding the marketing, the business strategy, and allowing us to make the biggest impact possible. So, Ivy, thanks so much for showing up today, and we hope you have the best day ever.
Thanks for having me. It's been a joy. Go Marathon, go.
That's right.
I absolutely love that you do this. My hat's off to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivy. We'll see you soon, okay?
Bye.